Hello, I'm Fred Evans. Welcome to Montgomery Week in Review. The Fulbright Prize International Understanding will be presented to Angela Merkel from Germany this year, and the ceremony will actually be in Berlin. Bruce Fowler, who sits on the board of Fulbright, will comment. The Maryland 2019 session of the General Assembly will begin next week, and the Committee for Montgomery is preparing their advocacy agenda. Maria Maisto, CFM, Executive Director of CFM, will explain this agenda and how CFM plans to achieve it. The Truancy Prevention Program was adopted in 2010 in 2 Montgomery County middle schools and now is in 19 middle schools as part of the Crime Prevention Initiative of the State's Attorney's Office. Georgine DeBord, a Truancy Prevention Manager, will tell us about the program. Will technology aid in resolving the feeling of loneliness and isolation that sometimes affect seniors? Henry Hailstock, who comments for Montgomery Week in Review, has been considering this question as the 2019 begins. Good day.
Good day. Good
tell us,
to be here.
Tell us about this prize that Ms. Merkel is going to be receiving and your...
It's actually Dr. Merkel. But
I'm sorry.
No, she's the current Chancellor of Germany, and she was selected as the prize winner for the Fulbright Prize for this year, based on her achievements both as a leader in Germany, but also in economic sense, but also in terms of the work that they have done with regard to helping migrants coming in from Africa and other places where they're oppressed. She's stood out, along with the other people who have been given this award, as someone who has stood in the wind, shall we say, in terms of holding up and doing the right thing.
Right.
We'll put it like that. And
will you be there?
Yes.
Oh, that's wonderful.
I will be there as one of the board members, and I'm looking forward to this very much. And I think this is a very meritorious person to be given this award. Other thing to say about it is that of the people who have been given the Fulbright Award, 4 of them have gone on to get Nobel Prizes.
Oh, another minor award.
Well, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Well, this is a category of person who
Right.
is quite special,
Right.
and deserves recognition, we think. So.
A lot of us don't know, what's the Fulbright? What is the Fulbright?
Okay, the Fulbright Award or Prize is named after Senator William Fulbright,
Right.
who is a senator from Arkansas, who after World War II said, we really need to do more to increase international understanding and try to prevent wars, is really what it comes down to. So in 1946, he sponsored legislation for the development of this such a program, the Fulbright Program. And this program is now regarded as the flagship exchange program of the Department of State. And it has about 8,000 people a year, about half U.S., half foreign nationals who are exchanged between their countries and the U.S. And it's been extremely successful. There are a number of Nobel laureates and heads of state who have gone through this program. The one I find most fun is the King of Spain. And if you go to the Fulbright website, they list what are the current positions of people who've gone through the program, and usually they're ambassadors or heads of state, and his is king. Okay, now how do you beat that?
How about that?
But you know, a very supportive person. And other thing to say about the program is it is undoubtedly the most highly leveraged program in the U.S. government.
Really?
That for every dollar the U.S. government puts into supporting Fulbrighters, most other countries are 3 or 4 or more.
Mm-hmm.
I did my Fulbright in Sweden, in Stockholm, and the difference was about 4 to 1 in terms of the support that came.
How long of a period is, when you said you were in
Sweden.
Sweden, how long of a period of time?
It was a 1-year
Wow.
fellowship. Now there are different categories of these. There are some that are longer or shorter. It can be 3 months.
Right.
But the idea is that if you go and spend some time in another person's country and you learn something about their culture, about their language, about how they think about things, it gets much easier to interact with them and to explain to people back home, well, this is how this happens and why this happens, and these are really fine people.
Right.
Is this an annual award that is received? How is it determined who gets the award? And
Well, there's a committee.
Of course.
Of course. No, it's about once a year, but it can vary. If there were not someone who was regarded as meritorious, then they wouldn't do it. But in this case, it was easy. And
who makes up the committee that makes the decision?
well, there's a committee of the Fulbright Association, which is housed here in Washington, based here in Washington. But the members of that committee are are former Fulbrighters from various states, other places. And so it's it's a democratic process, I'll say it like that, and the committee has to agree. And but I think the important thing is that what it gives us is a realization of we're all carbon-based life forms, and we're living here on this planet. There are about 7.7 billion of us, and more every day. And the Earth is a spaceship, and we have to get along because there are only so many finite resources, air, food, water, you name it. And if people can't figure out ways to interact with each other in a peaceful way, then you get into some other things that are really not nice to think about. Yeah.
And we, on that note, that positive note, we will hopefully hear from you after the event.
I'd love to.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Maria, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tell us about Committee for Montgomery. I know a little bit about it.
Yes, you
but
do. You and Henry both do. So the Committee for Montgomery is a really fascinating, diverse coalition of groups spanning business, labor, education, arts, civic organizations that have come together to lobby the state government on issues of common concern. And this year, we have chosen to focus on education. So we want to produce more Fulbright scholars, when we should be able to out of Montgomery County and certainly from the state of Maryland, and have produced many. So we're looking at the Kerwin Commission for this legislative session. But as you know, there was a little wrench put into the agenda for the Kerwin Commission in December, and we're going to have to deal with that in the upcoming legislative session.
Now, I know it would take a long time to describe it in a few words.
Yes.
What is the Kerwin Commission?
So the Kerwin Commission was appointed it's called the Kerwin Commission on Excellence and Innovation in Education, and it was designed to sort of follow on the Thornton Commission to improve public education in the state of Maryland. And so it's been charged with making both policy recommendations and funding recommendations. What they have decided is that while they will not be able to address funding recommendations for this session, they are going to go ahead with policy recommendations, and there will be some bridge funding that will be addressed in the session. So there's going to be plenty to do in spite of the delay that was announced, and we're ready for that.
Okay.
Are there any special areas that they're looking at?
Yes. Yes. So, so fortunately, the consensus that has emerged is around early childhood education, which everyone agrees is critically important and has long-term effects. at Committee for Montgomery, we want to make sure that that when the stage is set to address the funding formulas, that data that are used to evaluate Montgomery County in particular take into account the diversity of the county and the needs of the county, because people don't often recognize that we have many needs and challenges that are actually more in common with other parts of the state. So we want to preserve funding for Montgomery County. And we want to address issues spanning pre-K through career and technical education, job training, that kind of thing. So, so again, a lot to do, and we're hoping to really strengthen coalitions with partnerships and collaborations with other organizations that are working on this issue, from PTAs, school boards, and other members of the community. So it's going to be an exciting time, I think.
Yeah.
I look at it as being a difficult time, because whereas before, you know that you and I have addressed a number of those issues. Already a number of the students are behind when they really get into school, period, and really don't catch up, matriculating to each level. And that's the concern I brought up at the meeting Monday. And I don't know how they're basically going to look at that and not include the community as well, primarily because you do need the funding for that, for pre-K. And it's been proven over and over again. Where I'm from, D.C., back when I was in school, which is, wow, moons ago.
Long time ago.
They talked about that. And not every household can sit down and work with students like that. They have to rely on education. And they found that those that have been exposed to that learning early on are the ones that progress, because they have that base. And we all know when you have a solid foundation,
that's absolutely
you're able to move on and up. So
have,
that's my concern.
Having I have 3 daughters, and I was fortunate enough to be able to provide them with reading and all that, and just to see the results of that very personally, and then comparing that to families that don't have the resources. Not that they don't care. They don't have the resources to.
And one of the things we're going to try to do is address Governor Hogan's interest in school construction, and see if there are opportunities for collaboration, especially for providing wraparound services for the whole child, the kinds of resources that we know are really critical to helping children succeed in school.
What kinds of support could you get from, say, NGOs like Rotary International, or do you get? And where would they be most effective?
Sure, that's a really, really good question. I'm not even sure what the extent of those kinds of partnerships are, and that would be something that we would certainly want to explore. Certainly, as people are concerned about where the funding is going to come from, we can start to explore where can services and programs be consolidated in order to be most efficient. Where can we find public-private partnerships that can really augment and support what we're trying to accomplish?
Well, the other factor, the big problem, is that each section has a different need. You take that need around the Kennedy school system, they have a different need, because if you look, they don't have enough resources socially as other parts of the community, like Upper County.
We're going to have to take a break, and we have to take a break, and we'll be right back.
Okay.
Mom, can we get some ice cream? Please, Mom, please.
No, we're having dinner soon.
Please.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of children in foster care who will take you just as you are.
In the small town of Elmira, New York, a boy was born into an all-American family. The odds of him achieving his dream in the fashion industry? 1 in 23 million. The odds of having a child diagnosed with autism? 1 in 88. I am Tommy Hilfiger, and my family is affected by autism. Learn more at autismspeaks.org/signs.
For those dealing with the daily struggles of caring for a loved one, we hear you. That's why AARP created a community with experts and other caregivers to help us better care for ourselves and the ones we love.
Getting closer to nature can get you closer to your family. Go to discovertheforest.org.
Georgine, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
And I think I'll talk about the truancy prevention program, but no, that's all right. I'll let you.
You could. You certainly could.
Tell us about this very important, critical program.
So the Truancy Prevention Program was an initiative that State's Attorney John McCarthy brought to the county in 2010. Being a former educator himself, he understands
Right.
the value of education. So what it is a program that is it started in 2 middle schools in the county. We're now in 19. And what it does is addresses over a 10-week period to the root causes of truancy, finding out what the root causes of truancy for these children are, the students identified by the school, and how can this panel, multi-agency group, address the needs of the child, the needs of the family, get the child to school. Usually when they're in school, grades will be affected positively, and also negative behaviors will also go away, which could ultimately lead to the child getting into criminal activity or other things. So it involves a panel involving school personnel and state's attorney personnel and members from the community, such as yourself,
Right.
Who come into the school, and then mentors, usually 2 community members who come in, and they will spend a little bit of time each week over the 10-week period with the child, getting to know the child. Sometimes for a child, all it takes is finding a caring adult that they
Yep.
can speak with.
No question.
And we'll have kids come in with their hoods up the first day, and by the last week they're talkative, telling us everything about them. That's a huge thing to be able to do over that period.
What have been, how do I say, we're always talking about results. What do you see in the time you've been working with the program? What are the results?
Well, in the time I've had it in the office to be able to look at it, I'll just use the 2017-18 because that's the full year results. 300 kids were identified through the program throughout the year that we dealt with, 300 students. Out of that, 75% increased their attendance.
Wow.
50% graduated from our program in the parameters that we have. But for 75% of those students to increase their attendance by 60% or more, that's huge.
Yeah.
And grades went up. Self-advocacy skills were developed. Again, identifying even people in the school that they can speak with. And these kids succeeded. We also helped parents, giving them tools. In some cases, it's something as simple as the child doesn't have an alarm clock, which we then will provide them. It's also an incentive-based program, so we work with the kids to set goals for themselves of what they want to accomplish, even if it's just going to speak to a teacher about how can I raise
Right.
my grade, can I get these homeworks in, I don't understand this, when can I meet with you? And ways to, what happens when you miss the bus, what are you going to do? We deal in a county where there are grandparents raising children, helping parents out with getting kids to school and back and forth. So we help them problem solve.
Right.
And grades usually improve with this, but our biggest thing is getting these students learning how to advocate for themselves and what they can do to take control of their lives and succeed through high school and beyond.
Well, they want to see examples, and they want to have somebody that cares. I remember when I was working with Giant Food that we used to adopt a school, and we used
Right.
to go out and on certain days of the week and talk to classes. The one thing that we learned is that most of them look at, okay, this is a suit just coming in, we won't see him anymore. So we had to develop a program with the principal that we would interact on a regular basis, and that helped. My fraternity, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, we have nationally as well as locally a program called Guide Right. We started in a school in Gaithersburg to mentor the students there, and we won a national award for that. But we looked at it and said, we need to start early. So we're now doing middle school as well as high school.
Right.
And we have them take over the program by, they decide who's going to be the leader and how they're going to run it, and we help them with guiding them on different things. And you'll be surprised what comes out and what's discussed. And that's all they need, somebody to care, and that's there on a regular basis. One example that I can give you is the gang that's prominent now, the Hispanic gang. What's it?
MS-13.
MI-13.
MS-13.
We had one guy that was in the middle school, and his brother was in middle school. They worked, tried to get out and do other things because they were trying to get away from the local influence. We started that program there in the middle school, and he would come in quiet, not talking much. So it was a good-sized kid. So I used to mess with him about playing football and all. And he liked it. And then, one time he had his mother and sometimes his aunt come and pick him up after the thing.
Yeah.
They were late, so we would not leave a student there until they were actually picked up. He started talking. The problem, his older brother is in jail because of that. He did not want to be there, and he didn't want his younger brothers to do it either. So we were talking about that. He used to go to leisure, the fitness place and try to get away from it. We told him how and what to do it. By the time he graduated, he's now in high school playing football, and his grades are doing well.
That is a great concluding story to that. No, thank you very much for sharing that, and we'll definitely keep tabs on it. It's from my point of view, being on the two middle school programs, it's fantastic.
It's very impactful to the kids, to the students, and when you have them come up to you later. We also involved, just very quickly, the Montgomery County Police Department. There are a lot of police officers are our mentors, and that really helps to break down those stereotypes of what a police officer is. So we're very proud of that part of it.
Mr. Hailstock.
Yes, sir.
It's your time.
It is?
What do you mean?
Well, the last time, no. Tell us about services for those who are aging, unlike us, of course.
I won't get into that. But one of the things I wanted to talk about is isolation and loneliness. Really, that is more prevalent now than ever, and
among
period, but
right.
more so among seniors.
Right.
It's been recognized that 8 million adults who are 50 years or older suffer from isolation.
Wow.
Now, let me define isolation and loneliness. Isolation is where a person is disconnected, use that term, disconnected from their family, friends, and community, which is different from loneliness, where a person perceives his or her situation, which is totally different. Now, isolation and loneliness itself really is a health issue. And most of the time, one of the things that comes out of that health risk is dementia, which we all know is a big problem. But we found that AARP Foundation is doing a research with 150 residents of 5 senior locations in Baltimore and Washington, D.C. And they're doing research to see that these little devices that we call, that we talk to, Alexis and Google and some of the other, will help.
Will help with the isolation.
Yeah, with the isolation itself. And it's been proven to really work, because the human interaction with this, they get to hear their favorite music, the audio book, know the community calendar, and can set the appointments for their doctor's appointment, eye appointment, or really going out to grocery, reminded about groceries, the whole bit. I know I use it.
Well, just from the
It's great.
perspective of this country, 1946 to 1964, that's the baby boom era. And now, so do your math, that those numbers are going to increase.
Yeah.
Going to increase.
They
are increasing, not going.
Very-
It seems
very
like
much so.
there's a real opportunity for what you were talking about in terms of mentorship programs to connect with.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Absolutely, and that's
with
one
what
of the
Henry's
things
talking about.
we are currently looking for volunteers.
Yeah.
And we're always looking for volunteers.
Yeah, what a
Never turn anybody
win-win
away. And we
proposition,
have
yeah.
quite a few. Our mentors range from 21 years old to, I wouldn't even venture to say how old the oldest one
Please
is.
don't.
Yeah.
And but it's great because they come in a way that is very non-judgmental
Right.
with these kids. Matter of fact, we even encourage them, don't come in a suit. We don't want you coming in a
Right.
suit, because for that child to see that suit, that gives
Yeah.
something. They come in
Yeah.
casually and just talk to them, and
Yeah.
it's wonderful to see the kids
Yeah.
open up. They'll find something in that person that they can relate
They
to.
they all like to see grandma and grandpa
Yeah.
and interact and talk, because some of them don't know, if never had a
That's
grandma
right.
and grandpa, they
Yeah.
never knew a grandma and grandma.
Right.
But really, you have to make sure that those elderly individuals are, mentally and physically capable
Yeah.
now themselves. And one of the things that they found in the study, which has promise, is that you have to first have the adults get used to the new technology.
Yeah.
Because some of them have not been exposed to the smartphone or want to be exposed to the smartphone or the wireless internet. So you have to have mentors within their community to help them
And that's where the
overcome
youth
that.
can
That's
come
right,
in on the
that's right.
opposite side.
That's
The
exactly
youth-
right.
And I've seen that where the youth will come into places and do that, and you get that interaction
Yeah.
there also.
And
Tech
on
help.
that note, the youth and the elderly, I want to thank all of you for joining me this week, and thank you for joining all of us for this week's edition of Montgomery Week in Review. I'm Fred Evans. Please join us next week at the same time. Thank you all.